Hello, everybody. I'm Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach. I'm the founder of the Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program, Creator. There's my good. I'm using some good enunciation today. I talk for a living. Anyway, creator of the Dream Business Academy, founder of No Hassle Newsletters, which is my extraordinary done for you newsletter program used by 1,200 small business owners in 9 countries. And I'm also the host of Dream Business Radio, now in its 10th year. This right here is episode 520. Who would have thought that? So I want to welcome you to another very special live edition, something I started doing almost a year ago. And I have a very special guest, Deborah Johnson. How are you doing today, Deborah?
I am doing great. It's great to be here with you. And thanks so much for the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. Hey, folks, this episode is brought to you by the Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program. If you're an entrepreneur or small business owner, tired of, as I say, slow to no growth in your business, if you're feeling overwhelmed, unfocused, and especially, you want to create multiple streams of revenue in your business, something I'm very good at, then check out the Dream Business Mastermind. You can do that at Dream Biz Coaching, dreambizcoaching.com. Let me tell you a little bit about Deborah, and we'll dive right in. Deborah Johnson is an inspirational speaker. She's an author, an international award-winning music artist, and she helps other people get unstuck by producing and executing a successful plan. I love this, for the second half of their life. It's one of the things when I got to pause real quick. I got pitched about 160 times for guests to be on this show because my show Dream Business Radio was promoted. And I looked at Deborah's stuff and I'm like, that's really interesting. I don't think I've ever interviewed an award-winning artist in the second half of her life. And I was sharing this in our green room, so to speak. And I'm like, I love that you're so niche. Anyway, I get very excited doing these interviews, which is one of the reasons I keep doing them. But Deborah has been nominated for multiple Grammy Awards. She spent over 20 years in the entertainment industry. She's produced over 24 albums and she's written 3 musicals. A little bit of an underachiever, Deborah. And she's the author of 5 books, including The Summit. It's an allegory. I don't know what that word is. Allegory of the entrepreneur. She speaks in both live and virtual events, and she hosts and produces the popular Women at Halftime podcast. And now you're starting to see the theme there. So Deborah, once again, welcome to Dream Business Radio.
Well, thank you. That was an amazing introduction. Oh my gosh, where did you get all that information?
Amazing about how many times I flubbed a word or something.
I tell you what, it's amazing how much we can kind of get our words turned around, isn't it, when we talk?
So I mentioned about a month ago, Dream Business Radio got featured in some podcast publication or something, and I got literally about 160 people apply to be guests. So, which was a nice problem to have, although it took me hours and hours to sift through people. But I reached out to you and I said, Deborah, I've never had like a Grammy nominated musician, but I love the fact that you're also an entrepreneur. And what I really admired, I love when you can niche down your marketing. And I read a couple things about the second half, which obviously I'm guessing means the second half of somebody's life. So I guess that means when you're 40s, 50s, whatever that means. And so I'm very interested in that. Now, before I get to the question, I want to ask you about your book and all kinds of things. I always start the show out this way. People tell me that I love learning strategies, marketing, tactics, and all that from your guests, but I also love hearing their backstory, how they became an entrepreneur, maybe some of the challenges, things like that. So one of the ways I start this out is, are you a first generation entrepreneur, or did you have parents or grandparents perhaps that kind of showed you the way?
Well, I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur meant growing up, and it wasn't used. It wasn't used in education. But I think my father, even though he was a fire captain and was in that sort of field, he was definitely an entrepreneur because he did things on the side always. You can be an entrepreneur with a side business. In fact, I always encourage people to do that, to kind of figure out maybe if they really like what they're doing, and it's very low risk. It takes a little extra time, but it's very low risk. Okay. So I think that entrepreneurial streak was there. The musician streak was also there and that's very entrepreneurial.
I think I read, wasn't your grandmother, was she a violinist or?
She was a violinist, came over
Okay.
from Italy and played in Carnegie Hall and with the violin and mandolin when she was 16. And she also graduated from the New York Conservatory of Music, which was very unusual for a woman at that time.
Yeah.
Then went into, this dates her, because she went into an arranged marriage. And she had a dozen kids and really never played again. So that sort of
dozen kids.
yeah,
Wow.
it kind of came down, but it's, I really never got to hear her really play, which is totally a shame. But I do have a sister who was is still a professional violinist. I've used her for some of my projects. And so I grew up as her free accompanist, and I've always loved violin music and string music. Actually, through my lifetime too.
I really think a musician is an entrepreneur because, when you become an entrepreneur, you may have business cards, you may have an office, you may have all the things, but if you don't go out and bring in some revenue,
Right.
how do you live? And
Right.
you could be a musician, you could be very accomplished, Carnegie Hall or whatever.
Right.
But if you don't get gigs, either get your own gigs or get into orchestras, whatever, then that's it. So you really have to learn to sell. So was it the entrepreneurial? Well, I guess I want to getting ahead of myself. So did you go right into music? Like after high school, did you go to music college or what did that look like?
Well, I was kind of pushed into education,
Okay.
and I always thought I'd get that degree just to fall back on because I used to perform. And I
The
was
old safety net for musicians, right? Go get
total safety net.
Yeah.
I started teaching when I was 13, and teaching like that is also an entrepreneurial field. And because you are always developing new students and, telling people, yes, I can take more and all of this. But I started teaching adults at the age of 13 because I started teaching kids because I didn't want to pull weeds or babysit the 5 kids next door. So I started teaching piano. And so then I started teaching their parents. And so that put me through school. It was fairly lucrative all the way through. And so I've never quit teaching. And then when I went into college, my dad was big, which I always appreciated. He said, no one can take away that degree, that piece of paper. So he really encouraged us girls. I have 2 sisters, and now it's kind of funny because then I had 3 sons, but 2 sisters, and he always encouraged us to finish our education. So, but I was kind of pushed into that area, even though I was already performing and doing some touring and all over actually, but pushed into the area of education because it was so natural for me. And I was kind of, encouraged to keep going there. And so that, but I didn't feel like that was my calling of being in a classroom full time. I've always just done part time. I've taught every single level through graduate school. I've gotten jobs, but that wasn't really what I loved to do. I love to create. I absolutely love to create. And I do like to perform. Performance is an outflow of the creativeness. So my performing in music, when I've done headline entertainment, that's been an outflow of creating music and of creating arrangements and shows. And the speaking is an outflow of the messaging and of the writing. So that's where it all connects together. But you were so correct, Jem, when you were talking about, gigs, because I've worked so many years on referral, and usually the jobs kind of come to me. I have pursued things. I've showcased. I've done showcases across the country for performing arts. It's a great way for people to see you live, because you go to those conferences, and I lined up showcase rooms. Actually, I produced them. But the fact of getting gigs, one gigs to another, that is a fact of being an entertainer as well.
Yeah.
So, and staying on. So those were very, very insightful for you for bringing those up.
So you, I believe I read in the introduction, you produced 24 albums and you wrote 3 musicals. Did the album sold, and did the musicals get turned into plays, or?
Yeah, the albums got me work. And usually you don't plan on making a whole lot of money from doing an album project, especially if it's independent. I've done a lot of independent work, unless you have a huge company behind you throwing in $1 million behind you. So
Okay.
$1 million I was going to spend. And books are pretty much the same way. Sometimes the main publishers, they will do some of that, but a lot of times it's up to the writer and up to the artist to do that sort of promotion. But those, as far as the products there, they got me work, they got me shows, and it's like a business card. The musicals, I always call them a bad habit, a money pit.
Like a boat.
People think, oh my gosh, I had no clue that going into that, after even writing my first and writing my second one, that, oh, you have to produce these. Oh, I've got to plan world premieres of these musicals. I've got to hire directors. I've got to hire actors, which is a whole different field. And, through all of this, and writing is rewriting in musicals, that's where really I learned that craft, to where, you start putting something on a stage and an actor doesn't feel like it's going to the right place. You are up all night working and rewriting a scene. So those were some very big learning experiences. So now I do have those available. They can be done at some schools and community events. I'm starting to promote those more. They take a long time to get launched.
What you describe about the musical and all the stuff that comes after that, I mean, it's very much like being an author. When you finally get your book done, you kind of go, whew, I'm done. You go, nope, you're not even at the 50-yard line. Got the promotion, the interviews, everything you got to do to make that book sell, and put out there. So anyway, so you then we're a half an hour show, because I feel like I'm going to skip ahead to the mid part.
Okay.
But at some point you're teaching, you're writing, you're producing, and then you also started writing books. Was the book part of your more entrepreneurial side, or how did that come about?
Actually, I was already an entrepreneur. What I was doing was, I felt like in the music field, this was kind of right at that point of 2008 and 9 with the Great Recession, and it started dropping out. And especially, it happened a lot in the entertainment field as well, that I was doing some headline shows, and all of a sudden those either started canceling or they weren't booking as much. And I felt like, okay, what is the future here? And what I saw, I had some agents I was working with, and what I saw were the music act were mostly, they were hiring the name acts, or those with a hit song, or those with tribute acts that were doing name acts and hit songs. And I was either at my solo show, was doing a tribute to Gershwin and Andrew Lloyd Webber, because I could do all the money notes and I play. But I was also doing a dueling piano show, a headline show. And those were a little bit more of a variety show. And I felt like, okay, so where is the market going? I had to study it a bit. And I found that a lot of those organizations and corporations were still hiring speakers that I didn't know who they were. I didn't even know that was a thing.
To be a paid speaker?
Yeah, paid speaker. And so I started talking to a couple of my agents, and especially one. My husband and I ended up visiting and spending a little time with her. She had an agency, and I said, what is this speaking thing? Is it a thing? What is it? So started doing some research, and that's where I started expanding. And really, the speaking is an expansion of the career, because I still work for Disney with music and still do some things. I'm not doing a lot of those headline and the shows. I'm not advertising those at all anymore. But with the speaking, with the books and all that, it's a creative aspect. Writing a book is very similar to writing the book of a musical. Writing is rewriting, and you need to cut it down. Sometimes you got to cut out a chapter. Sometimes it's just like a musical. You got to cut out a song and it just rips your heart out. You got to cut out a scene. But that's what the whole process is. And so it's work. I love what I do, but it's definitely work, and it's consistent work. And as an entrepreneur, entity here. I plan my time fairly, regularly to make sure I'm on track with projects.
Yeah, and it seems to me you have a really strong creative side of your personality, or it's who you are, whether it's through the music or the books or the speaking. You love the creative side of things. So how did you always know that? And then how did you learn to kind of maximize that in your business and in your private life or
Well,
public life?
I know people that are so much more talented than I am, and so much actually more creative, that when they put things together, you just watch their mind, you know. But my creativeness comes, I think, is that I'm very, very consistent. And I come back to rewriting, and I come back to doing it again and doing it again. I have more ideas than I'll ever have time for in my life. So I just really just flood of ideas.
Yep.
Because I write them down. If I don't write them down, they're gone. Okay, they're gone. But the creativeness is expanding on that. What is worth my time, spending my time on, and how I feel like I can help more people. Like the book I'm finishing now, it won't be ready until the beginning of next year. But it's a subject. In fact, I was planning on writing a sequel to The Summit. That was going to be my next book. And there was a whole series on being able to get out of your personal roundabout, where I speak on this. I thought, I need to write that book. I need to put all of that into book form.
What a great analogy.
Yeah.
People get stuck in those roundabouts.
Yeah, they get stuck in the roundabout, and they're not even ready to climb their summit yet. They're not even ready to climb their hero mountain because they're still stuck in a roundabout.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about The Summit, which is your latest book. And I was checking that out online, but there's another book before we go there. You wrote a book called Women at Halftime. Mm-hmm. And so this is where, I first started realizing your whole focus on, I don't know if you feel a calling or desire to help women kind of at that, whatever the halftime in their mind is, to move on. Now, some of the chapters, I don't have room or time to ask you all of them, but I'm going to call them out because I think it shows your creative side. So the chapters in the book, Women at Halftime, at the base of Hero Mountain, mindset cable, passion cable, competency cable, skills cable, habits cable. I'm thinking as you have all the cables, it's the cable going up the mountain, but you can correct me. Okay. Right. Relationships cable and reaching the summit. So I guess I figured out that analogy, but what is the Hero Mountain? Where does that come in? Well,
Hero Mountain is the top of your summit. That's where you are climbing.
Okay.
And it was a great analogy. I was able to trademark it. And just because of that sort of, the sort of visual that people have of climbing their summit. And Hero Mountain is the last part of the character in the book, The Summit, as well. It's an allegory, which is a story within a story. So that's why it's more like a musical, almost like a book.
I just learned what an allegory was.
Yeah, that's what an allegory is. And it's almost like, the Harry Potter series, except for it's not, it's got some of that realistic fantasy in it. But it's not quite what the Harry Potters are. In fact, I read every single one of those books while I was writing it, because I just love she's a great writer. But the analogy of getting to your summit. So those cables are all very important part of your life, of, starting with the mindsets and putting those habits, your relationship, they all work together. So that's what I really covered. Women at Halftime. It is a halftime of life, mid-career. And I focus, it's not just for women, it's also for men. Men, they listen to my podcast, they do, and a lot of men are involved there too, but it was easier to brand women. So, and and they relate to it. Women buy more of the books and they listen more to material like this. So, and I've had my newsletter going too for probably, I don't know how many years, I might date myself here, probably 20, but it's a weekly newsletter. So those people that are listening and involved in that message to be able to move forward in their life, That's what I really want to help. But some people aren't even to that stage because they're stuck in that roundabout. And that's where I'm doing that.
Okay.
It's kind of the pre-story of what some of those stories, you read this great novel and now you want to know, well, what happened before that? So that's kind of what this is kind of getting people ready for that. But that's what Mallory, the character in The Summit, her name's ill-fated. That's what her name means, Mallory. And she has to change her name after she gets through all of these different lands in getting to actually climbing her summit. And her name turns to Andriette, which means strong and courageous. But she had to go through all of those different lands to even get to that place.
So the halftime analogy, was that something that you came up with? Or because a lot of times as entrepreneurs or when you're working with people at a coaching level or consulting level, you hear things like somebody might say to you, oh, I just feel like I'm at the halfway point or half point. Was that something you came up with, or how did that originate?
Well, I actually got the idea because years ago I had read this book by Bob Buford, and he was a sportscaster, and he had written this book. Actually, I think it was in the Christian men's market. About the halftime of life. And these men were looking now for more significance. They were looking to not just go into these were CEOs, these were me.
Yeah.
So there was this whole institute of this halftime institute. But I thought that is there's nothing really women at halftime. There's nothing like that. I just liked that sort of name. I couldn't really, I'd trademark that name, but I could use the name because you can use that sort of name because it wasn't it's not associate. Actually, I did talk to some of the people in that institute. I just wanted to make sure, and I was above board, sent them my book and everything else, so they knew what it was about. But the women at halftime, people get it. They understand what it is, and that's what I needed to do in that sort of branding. That this helps. And once a month I bring on my husband with me too on our podcast. It's a little different format than anybody else has. But we've been married for a number of years. He was a professional athlete when I married him. And so we have a lot to share, but plus we have adult kids now. So there's a lot of things that we share at that point, but we also share a lot of business because he was an RIA, he's been in sales, he's a number of different things. And so I have one guest a month. I speak twice a month, and I bring him on. So it's a big variety that I like to have in that sort of format.
Yeah, some of the I would say some of the prospective coaching members that I talk with, and one of the themes I hear probably more than almost the other is, do you think there's still time? Could I do this? Right? I in my own head, because I still think I'm quite young, I would think I'm at halftime, but I don't think I'm going to live to be 128. So I think I'm past halftime. But a lot of people get to a point, whether they're 50s or 60s, and they've had a good career, but they feel like they really want to scratch that entrepreneurial itch, or they want to do something that's going to plug a hole. Like they've made the money, or they've got the house, there's a hole that they want to fill. Sounds like that's some of the work that you do.
Yes, and mid-career, halftime of life, officially, according to the internet, we know how true that is, is after age 40. But usually it's people that are kind of in their 50s, and they're going through some of those same things that you just mentioned of restlessness and wondering, okay, is there more? What's next?
Yeah, and with you really start to feel the clocks running out, which, by the way, this is on my desk. I think I showed you this when I first met you. This is on my desk all the time.
I love that.
Yeah, from when I had cancer at 41. So maybe that was the halfway point. Now I'm always reminded that, the sand's running out and you can't stop it. So Deborah, I want to ask you about your book, The Summit, Journey to Hero Mountain.
Yes.
And I love the way, I'm a writer and I help people write. So I love the creative process and I love naming chapters. So it's like intriguing. So you have the timely offer, the arrangement, the tangled forest, the keys to courage, the gems of opportunity, the bridge of possibility. Totally love that. The danger of distraction, the wings of hope, preparation for the climb, and then the summit. So it seems like your book really goes on the journey to crescendo, right? And not every book does that.
Yes. In fact, I have some maps that are actually in the book. and they're not in color in the book. I have them as downloads, but
Nice.
I have color maps or these other maps that are actually, because it's a journey through there. I have a separate map for the journey to Hero Mountain, and then I have a map of the land of allure, because the land of allure has the imagination. Nobody's there because they're all at the social media circus, and so you have all of these different parts and made up names of Bluebird and some of those other. But yeah, it is an actual journey through these lands and things that our character, our main protagonist, has to overcome. And she's given some jewels. She finds some jewels and she wants to keep them because they look so valuable, more valuable than anything else she's had, but she has to spend them one at a time to even get to the next step. And it really shows how, in that sort of analogy, how we are given something so precious, which is our talent, our resources, where we live, our relationships, and sometimes giving those multiplies it. And so there are some of those, and I'm not that specific on the application, but you get it that she's had to spend this to go to the next. That's what you like to do as a writer, is leave a little bit of that to make sure people use their own imagination. So yeah, it was one of the hardest books I've written.
So it's not really a how-to book. It really is a story with a message.
Yeah, but there's so many principles, self-help principles in it. And that's what I wanted. I wanted people to be able to get to the end of the book and go, wow. And it's not just for those that have time. I've had comments that I need to give this to my grandkids. This is a great story that people that graduated from high school, graduated from college, they need to read this book. It's short and sweet. It's about, 150 pages. I don't know how many pages, but it's not that long. It's easy, pretty easy to read. But it's so applicable, and it's a good moral, straight ahead message of being able to use your gifts and getting beyond your fear. And something our character has to do too. She's given a band of hope, and I usually have one here, but I don't. It's a yellow band of hope that she has to put on her wrist, and she could never take it off. If she loses it, she loses hope, and she can't get to her summit. So there's those sort of analogies in this story. So it was really fun to write. I've loved writing all my books, actually.
They're like children, aren't they? I mean, it's
crazy.
They
are just so much. Yeah, they are, except for,
Well, we're fast running out of time. I got room for maybe one question, but I'm going to jam in too, because it's my show. So here's how I'll preface this. We're getting on an elevator. We're only going to the 3rd floor. So it's got to be an answer. What's the main message that you want? If people read the book, when they read the book, The Summit, what's that core message you want them to take away?
I want them to take away that they can do it. They can maximize their skills. They can maximize their resources. They've got experience. They've got all of this. There's hope for that, to do that, to have a next step, to be able to go on. And that's my whole business from music on has been about encouragement, to give people hope. And that if you lose hope, you've really lost everything. I mean, we've seen that, and people die when they lose hope. So, but there is, and don't get on your deathbed and say, oh, I wish I had, and that's where I want to make sure there are no, as much as I can, encourage people to not have regrets at that point.
That's actually why Stephanie and I did the unwise thing, according to her financial person, sold everything, bought that boat, and toured for 5 years.
Sounds fun.
I know, we didn't wait for retirement because, according to this, retirement might, so we decided to figure out a way, how do we live our life and have a big adventure? So yeah, I really like that. So just to let you know, I do a lot of research when I have somebody like you on my show. I was looking at your website, and you had a blog post. So I'll squeeze in one more question here. The blog post that really caught my attention was, does the impact of peer pressure ever end?
Yes.
What made you write that? I mean, I kind of know, but.
Well, it doesn't ever end. And that was the point of it, that we think we're through this and junior high school, and all of that. But we can feel that pressure from people doing business around us, that we're looking on social media and we're looking at, oh, they've got 300 likes in one day. Mm-hmm. Oh, look at their song is going and their book. Oh, they have 100 comments already. Those sort of, we put it on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we also get the pressure. I get marketing, things every day of just people wanting to help me move ahead. And so there's this sort of pressure that we feel, and this comparison. I mean, we felt a little bit of that comparison too, raising kids. All of a sudden we had a neighbor that their kids were, they could do no wrong. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my boys are climbing the roof in the rain and my neighbor's calling me, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
and but we feel some of that sort of pressure all through our lives, I think, personally and in business, and to really understand who we are, what we stand for, what our core values are, and not to feel like we have to live up to anything of anybody else's expectations, whether imagined or true.
Yeah. One of the things I teach my students is, because I'm on social media a lot, and it's like, well, Jim, I'm not getting enough likes, or I'm not getting comments. And to me, it's like, you want to put your best stuff out there so it will help people, whether it inspires them, encourages them, or to help them. Because some of the stuff that I put out there, I'm kind of known for Jim's tough love. So I'll put it right out there. Yeah. And I don't expect people to like and comment, because in a way it's like disclosing yourself. Oh, that was me. You wrote that for it. Nobody's going to do that. But I hear a lot. I get some private messages. I hear from my own students did I inspire that article? So I know this stuff's going out there. And so my mission is to use this tool of social media to help put out some good information, which hopefully might attract people to me. But I don't do it for the likes and the comments. You'd like to see them. I mean, we all have an ego, right? But it's like, just do your job, put the information out there. So anyway, I could talk for another half hour. What website would you like people to connect with you? How do you want to?
My website.
Which one of your 100 websites do you want people to?
Yeah, actually, I've scaled down, believe it or not. I love people to get to my newsletter, which is goalsforyourlife.com. That's all connected. goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. So that way you can connect with me. And on that page, you'll find other links to the podcast. You should find a link to my speaking site, Deborah Johnson Speaker. Everyone loves the music. DJ Works Music. I've had that. That was my very first website. And the reason why I wrote Bad Code, because it got hacked. But anyway, it's up, it's running. It's got tons of music on it, tons of videos. So yeah, but if you get on my newsletter or just connect with me on the social media, but those 3 websites. Also, I have a weekly article that comes out, but if you get on the newsletter, you'll get that. And goalsforyourlife.com/blog is where my articles all are. It's a separate website. I was told to do that because I have a membership site on the other. So that's plenty of information. Nobody's been able to even write that down yet. So
so the main one, the one I want to put in the description for the podcast, goals with an S foryourlife.com/newsletter, correct?
Right. Yes. You can connect with me that way. Also, you can get to me on that page. It'll have other links on it. And I have a lot of free stuff on my websites too. So if you just get on any of the information, I'm always putting those out.
Well, that's awesome. By the way, this gentleman here is in my group, good friend of mine for a long time, Phil Brakefield. He actually was a, I was going to say touring musician. He was like road crew, Three Dog Night, Elvis, all these great musicians. I don't think he road crewed for Gershwin or any of those folks, but I know he was looking forward to hearing the interview. So Deborah, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on Dream Business Radio.
Well, it has been a pleasure. And for your friend who was on the road crew, my thanks and my appreciation for you, because you guys keep the artist going. So I always appreciate those people.
He was a hard worker, but something makes me think he did it for the free beer. But anyway, that's
yeah, maybe. I work with plenty of them too. So.
That's right. Hey, folks, that wraps up this very special interview with my guest, Deborah Johnson. What a great one. Listen to it again. I highly recommend that. If you're watching this or listening to it on the replay, hit hashtag replay and leave a comment for Deborah. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. I highly recommend you connect with her at goalsforlife.com /.
Yes.
Oh, goals for your life. And I wrote that down. In my head, I'm like, Jim, you're going too fast. Goalsforyourlife.com. Thank you.
Yes. /newsletter. But the others, you can get to me too. It'll have a link to the newsletter anywhere.
Yeah, there you go. And you can connect with me at getjimpalmer.com. That's pretty simple. Getjimpalmer.com. And if you're interested, again, in joining me and about 27 other smart entrepreneurs in my coaching program, that's Dream Biz Coaching, Dream Biz Coaching. And as part of my legacy building program, because I am far past the halfway point, I have made all 6 of my books available for free in digital format. So that's obviously Kindle on Amazon, Nook Books on Barnes & Noble, and the iBookstore. But that's it. Until this time next week, another fantastic interview. I am Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach. You take good care.